Dr. Jason Fung, who is a well-known metabolism specialist and expert in the field, explains that the only reason you gain weight is due to the effects of insulin in your body. That is precisely why, even if you follow the strictest diet imaginable or commit to the most intense and rigorous workout routine, you still might not see the results you expect to see on the scale. If you really think carefully about how we actually gain or lose weight, you will notice that you only gain or lose weight when your body specifically tells you to do so, and that's simply because everything in our body is ultimately controlled by hormones. Without hormones, you don't grow, right? You won't get taller unless your hormones tell you to grow taller. Nothing happens in the body without hormones. This is how our body receives chemical messages. But for some reason, many people in the medical field who work on obesity treatment seem to overlook the role of hormones in this area. So there are a lot of different hormones that need to be considered. Insulin is one of the most important ones you need to pay attention to. That is, insulin is the hormone that tells your body to store more fat. But insulin itself is not your enemy. The main problem starts with carbohydrates. It's the excessive consumption of them that raises your blood glucose levels, which in turn causes a sudden spike in insulin and eventually leads to insulin resistance. What is insulin resistance? It's a term that is used when blood glucose levels rise and the body does not like them being that high, so it produces additional insulin to allow glucose to enter the cells. One of the main functions of insulin is to enable glucose to move from the blood into the cells so the cells can use it for energy. This process is important for maintaining healthy blood sugar levels. Insulin resistance is a term we use for patients who are told they have too much glucose and too much insulin in their blood, but it still doesn't enter the cells. It might seem that the most effective way to control insulin is to completely eliminate carbohydrates or to manage insulin levels through a fasting diet. But Dr. Fung revealed that there are also clever techniques and strategies that let you hack your body and naturally prevent sharp spikes in blood glucose, and consequently high insulin levels, without changing your diet. One of these tricks is simply to change the order in which you eat your food. This is a technique often used by people with diabetes to control their blood sugar levels, and research has shown that it really works. It has been shown that the order in which you eat your food can make a big difference in how much your blood glucose rises. Also, in 2015, a group of smart researchers conducted a preliminary experimental study on people with type 2 diabetes. These participants were taking metformin, and they measured their blood glucose levels by eating exactly the same meal but changing the order in which they ate the food. They selected 11 patients, and on one occasion, they first gave them carbohydrates, which included bread and orange juice. After waiting 10 minutes, they then gave them protein and fat, which consisted of skinless chicken breast and vegetables, a salad with dressing and steamed broccoli. And what they found was that there was a very significant difference in blood glucose levels. Not only in how high the glucose went, but there was also a big difference in blood insulin levels. In fact, the glucose peak as measured in the study was significantly reduced by 54%. And the area under the insulin curve, which is the amount of insulin your body sees over time, had decreased by 48%. This is a huge difference, considering that the two meals were exactly the same. The only difference was whether you ate the carbohydrates first or last, and when you ate the carbohydrates last, it seemed to make a huge difference for these people with type 2 diabetes. The point is, our digestion works much more slowly than we think. If you start your meal with protein and fat, they act like a kind of traffic controller for your digestive system. The carbohydrates that come afterwards, so to speak, get stuck in traffic. This means that without a sudden spike in insulin, without rapid breakdown or absorption, and even when your body finally gets to the carbohydrates, your insulin levels rise slowly and in a controlled manner. But the most important part is how this affects weight loss. Eating protein and fat at the beginning of a meal triggers the natural release of the hormone GLP-1, which sends the signal of satiety. You feel full for a longer period of time with less craving, especially for sweets. This trick is particularly helpful and really especially helpful for people who struggle with significant weight issues and find it mentally and physically difficult to change their diet. Because you're not actually depriving yourself or forcing any drastic changes at all. You're simply helping your body eat in a more thoughtful and mindful way so that you can make better choices. You naturally eat less, stay full for longer, and keep your blood glucose levels stable. If we eat exactly the same amount of calories, exactly the same foods, but just change the order, we can actually have 40% less glucose. That's a big number. This means we might be able to prevent the onset of type 2 diabetes. We can even do this for our children. We might be able to take fewer medications in the future. We might be able to lose weight because, again, that lower insulin level leads to less weight gain, and that means you really should start your meals in a way that you eat proteins, fats, and vegetables first and leave the carbohydrates for last. The best effect is that you can even just wait a few minutes. In this study, they waited 10 minutes before serving the food. So it's like one of those restaurants where you get an appetizer, then wait, and then have your main course. Well, in this case, move the proteins and fats to the beginning. And there's another benefit as well. Because when you eat those proteins and fats, you might not even want to eat the carbohydrates at all. Before I continue and mention a very important point, allow me, as a friend, to ask you to support me in this video. In any way you can, like subscribe, leave a comment, or share this video with others. And if you want to offer even more support, the super thanks, hype, or join options are available below the videos. Doing this helps me stay motivated to continue on this path. It lets me know I'm on the right track. And if you don't want to support, I completely understand. In any case, thank you to each and every one of you for your support. Let's get back to the rest of the discussion. Another way to reduce the impact of carbohydrates is to pair them with organic acids. In other words, eat them with foods like kefir, yogurt, or butter that contain lactic acid, or with olive oil that provides fatty acids, or even with vinegar, which contains acetic acid. These acids interact with the enzymes in your saliva and slow down the breakdown of carbohydrates several times over, effectively lowering the glycemic index of the carbohydrates you eat. If you eat bread, you'll notice that both the area under the curve and the glycemic index are higher. It has a glycemic index of 71. When you eat it with butter or olive oil, you can reduce it to 50, which is almost a 1/3 decrease in the glycemic index just by eating a little olive oil with bread. So the traditional method that some people use, dipping bread in olive oil and vinegar, can be very beneficial. The acid slows down digestion by blocking those salivary amylases, and olive oil gives the intestine something other than pure carbohydrates. From a weight loss perspective, this also helps address the problem of hunger and satiety. You naturally extend your body's fasting window, that is the period when fat is used as the main source of energy. But most importantly, it also helps optimize insulin. Even a small reduction in sudden insulin spikes can make a significant difference on your scale. It makes sense to help your body burn off excess energy after a meal. In other words, it physiologically shifts you toward using stored fat for fuel. To do this, Dr. Fung recommends taking a 30-minute walk after each meal. This helps regulate blood glucose levels, but more importantly, it activates the body's energy burning mode. What do most people do after eating? They lie down, watch TV, or just relax. All of these send a signal to the body to store energy and switch it into energy-saving mode. But if you even take a short walk, you flip that switch in the opposite direction, turning it to fat-burning mode. It's a small and simple activity that can make a big difference in your metabolism. After you eat, there's a lot of glucose, and when you walk, you encourage your muscles to burn that glucose instead of storing it. And since you don't want to store so much, your insulin levels go down. For example, in another study, they found that walking before a meal didn't have much effect on blood glucose. You can see that after eating, blood glucose was about 6.5. However, if you walk immediately after eating, it goes straight down to about 5.6 or around that. So it's actually a significant decrease. If you wait 30 minutes, it's almost in between, and the longer you wait after eating, the less effective it becomes. Of course, with Dr. Jason Fung's tricks, you won't lose a lot of weight in just a few days, but this is an easy and effortless strategy for weight loss. In fact, by following these simple tips, you'll naturally end up with a low-carb diet without even trying. As your metabolism returns to normal, the extra weight will gradually melt away before your eyes. Thank you for staying with me until the end of the video. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Watch these videos as well for more information. Until the next video, take care.